granular about our power for this Yom Kippur and 5786. But let's start by looking at our current situation. We live in a world where people are trying to survive, and in our hearts and our souls, we know that the current patterning of how we deal with conflict is leading to so much polarization that we wonder about the values that we most hold dear and the lives of ourselves, our loved ones, future generations, and the kind of life that actually is possible. The kind of polarization, demonization, othering that exists at this time is something that is contagious. It spreads. It's like a tar pit. It gets sticky, and more people get easily pulled in. But as I mentioned on Rosh Hashanah, the book, High Conflict, How We Get Trapped and How We Get Out of It, there are powerful stories from there that we're going to look a little bit more specifically into, as well as Jewish tradition and some other places, for how we can actually get out, take our power of writing ourselves and future generations into the book of life. But first, let's start with the obvious. The obvious is the current kind of patterning. And it has a reason. It's important because it comes from the evolutionary drive of, are we going to be eaten? Is that a threat that's going to eat us? A lion's coming at us? Or are we going to eat? Who will survive? And only one is probably going to make it. We will be eaten or we will eat. However, that kind of patterning, Amanda Ripley in her book High Conflict, that either or, us and them patterning, often escalates and makes things worse for everyone. And that's what we see in our world. And that's what is making our hearts sink and having us feel very trapped and powerless. But it needn't be so. But first, let's take a moment to honor that fight, flight response and to know what it's like in our body when we see something that is a perceived threat. Maybe somebody says something we don't like. Maybe somebody does something we don't like. Maybe somebody has done something that's really hurt us or somebody else. In many situations, though, that level of threat is still not really the lion coming right after us. Yet our response is as if that person, that threat was the lion. We escalate our response, and then they escalate, and it keeps going, creating destruction in its path. We know that. That person, I can't believe they did it. Oh my gosh, I don't feel that anger, that tightness. The blood leaves our brain and goes into our limbs. So again, we can fight or we can flee, but it doesn't allow for a greater capacity of actually choosing life. As we saw in Rosh Hashanah, with the infighting within the walls of Jerusalem while the Romans were on the outside, how do we deal with the Romans? This way, no, this way, no. That tendency is contagious and it traps us. But it makes it worse for everyone. And that's what we're seeing. That's why we're scared. How can we get out? Maybe we don't have to be doomed. So what can we do? One is we can actually start discerning, stopping, noticing when we're like this and we're really mad about something. But is that something actually the lion? Or is that threat actually the Romans on the outside of the walls trying to kill us? Most often, it's not. Maybe it's our spouse, our child, a coworker, a family member, something we even hear on the news, something a friend or a prior friend maybe said. It's as if that's threatening us and our life is at stake right now. But our intuitive response escalates the problem and creates suffering in its wake. So, what else is possible if our intuitive response is creating suffering and escalating the problem? As Amanda Ripley talks about in her book, the only solution to high conflict situations, the only way to get out, is to lean into the counterintuitive. Lean into what is uncomfortable, unfamiliar. Can we have the courage to do that? We're here as Jews because Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had the courage to do something radical, to feign his death, to have his students come with him and help him escape, get smuggled out at high risk of death and getting smuggled out, to immediately go to the Roman general at the time, another high risk situation, counterintuitive. And in a conversation to ultimately ask, can I be safe in this place, Yavne? The root of Yavne, the Hebrew word Yavne, literally has to do with building. I want to build something new. Can I be safe? Because of that legacy, we are here right now, 2,000 years later. Because of the counterintuitive, gang leaders leave gangs. Guerrilla leaders leave guerrilla warfare. So much can happen when we lean into the counterintuitive. So how do we actually do this? Well, first I want to just remind us that it may seem like our small actions don't actually matter. Come on, we're not going to suddenly change who are political leaders in one place or another in the world. What power do we actually have? Let me share a story with you from the Talmud about how Jerusalem fell. Another story about how Jerusalem fell was because of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. Kamsa was this man's friend and Bar Kamsa was his enemy. Guess who mistakenly got invited to the party? The enemy. You can read the story in Tractate Gittin. But because of that, Jerusalem fell. Because of the difference between a hen and a rooster. Because of a hen and a rooster, not their difference. Because of a hen and a rooster, Beitar fell, the rabbis teach us. Because of a spoke in a chariot, Har HaMelech fell. These are all examples the Talmud teaches us about sinat chinam, baseless hatred, just getting caught in that tar pit of high conflict. It gets sticky and we get trapped and we want more and we escalate and we tighten, we tighten, we tighten. No, we say, no, no, leave, the man said when his enemy was mistakenly invited to the party. Leave, go away. When we feel that, we know that we are getting trapped in the tar pits and death is the pathway out. But we're here to talk about life. We're scared in this current world because we actually want life and we see the pathway of death. The intuitive response is putting us on the pathway to death. So if we really want life, maybe we need to figure out how to muster the courage to say, well, who knows? If small things can lead to great destruction, maybe small things can lead to great opening. And in fact, when people don't fall into the tar pit, don't fall into the muck of the high escalation, it's amazing how the whole tenor can calm down and the problem can disappear, new solutions can arise. And we know how to do this. I'll bet there are times when you haven't been caught. When someone said something and you had enough sleep, you weren't stressed, and you said, you know what? I don't need to get caught in this argument. That's what I'm talking about at some level. We know how to be compassionate and be curious. We know how to lean in and help. We're teachers, lawyers, social workers, doctors, friends, lovers, parents, children, siblings. We know how to help. We're pet owners, we're gardeners. We see something and we know how to just be grounded and reach in and care. We share a lot of DNA with two small apes, chimpanzees and bonobos. They're about 98% related. We're like 97% related to them. Chimpanzee response to the unknown, hostility. They solve problems through aggression. Competition is a core way of being. But their sibling small apes, the bonobo. The bonobo responds to the unknown with curiosity. Curiosity, leaning in, getting close. Bonobo negotiate. Bonobos collaborate. We have that capacity as well. But when faced with a threat, for many of us, our intuitive response is the chimp response, the tightening. A short story in Midrash, from Genesis Rabbah. There was a famine, and the rabbi decreed a fast. It was that kind of a situation. He said, okay, let's all fast, and it didn't help solve the problem. And so he went into them and he said, you know what we need to do is we need to be more compassionate with one another. People started giving tzedakah, and then people saw, wait, there's a divorced couple over there, and that man is giving his ex-wife tzedakah. What's going on? There must be something suspicious happening. Well, the rabbi leaned in, he called them close, and with curiosity said, what's going on? And the man said, I saw her in distress, and so I went to help. And the rains fell. Compassion is powerful beyond belief. Leaning in with curiosity is powerful beyond belief. It's time for us to believe in it. So, as we go into 5786 ever deeper, I invite us to really ask ourselves, are we serious about life? At this time, maybe it's kind of like the Midrash about Bnei Israel taking the 10 commandments. There's a Midrash that says, we were faced with opportunity to take on the 10 commandments, to take the Torah and receive it. How much choice did we have in the matter? Well, says this Midrash, God was only holding Mount Sinai over our heads. Not so much choice, a little bit of a carrot there, a little bit of a stick there to say, I think it's time for you to take on the Torah. Well, perhaps right now we're being told, I think it's time for you to evolve collectively, not just one by one, but for a lot of you to get to know and see clearly. Continuing on the chimp response, we see where that leads. It's time to keep working on our bonobo response. Have that be intuitive. To go from the intellectual to the action, though, is really difficult. So maybe we have some opportunities to practice. We can learn from flights, actually, and aviation, which used to be very risky, that the number of plane crashes significantly decreased when pilots were introduced to realistic flight simulators, where they got to practice again and again, going from the intellectual into the habitual and creating new pathways of how to respond in any moment in a safe way. So why not? Why not play with our children, our family members, our coworkers? Not play to be mean, but play to work on ourselves. To start noticing when someone says something, am I going into a contracted place, into Mitzrayim, into narrowness, into Egypt? Or can I move into Merchavia, spaciousness, breadth, as Psalm 118 tells us? I call out to God from the narrowness, from Mitzrayim, from Egypt, and I ask, please answer me with space, so that the blood flow can move all throughout our being, not just be in our limbs for attacking or running. So 5786, here on Yom Kippur, we are committing ourselves, hopefully, to life. We're asking ourselves, how can I choose life and be part of life currently and into the future? May I live? And I ask us, 2,000 years ago, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he, with his courage and reaching out with others, together created the foundation that we 2,000 years later can be here with Judaism. Who are we to say that we have small part and no real part to play, that we can't impact anything? I am publicly committing to doing it imperfectly, but a clear commitment, a steadfast commitment to not being interested in the chimp way. If I really need to defend myself, I have ideas about even how to effectively do that. And I invite you to reach out to me if you're curious about that. But in the meantime, how can we disarm, neutralize a situation, not get caught, and create real opportunities, a real ground, build something new, new pathways, collective evolution at this powerful, important inflection point in human history for life, for Beit HaMikdash, for a new house of sanctity. The ones in Jerusalem fell. Now we no longer need to be limited by geographic location to Jerusalem, or for the Beit HaMikdash, for the temple, just to be for Jews. Our liturgy tells us, Yibanei HaMikdash, let us build a new Mikdash, a new place of holiness for life. I invite you to join me. Let me know if you want to link arms with me, as Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and his students did. And if you would like, I invite you to sing along with me right now. Yibanei HaMikdash. Yibanei, Yibanei, Yibanei HaMikdash. Yibanei, Yibanei, Yibanei HaMikdash. May we be written in the book of life. Amen.